Hi Bankman. This is Vasant Ponkshe, a retired bank officer from Bank of Maharashtra, coming before you again in another video series. I am thankful to you all the bankmen, those who have appreciated my first series of videos titled Be the Bank Nationalisation. In those 4 videos of 15 to 16 minutes each, I have tried to deal with the overall scenario as far as the government's likely attempts to privatize the nationalized banks. And so many of you have appreciated my views and have appreciated my efforts in placing before you my views in the best possible inputs which I had. Now in this next series of 4 to 5 videos of 15 minutes each, I will try to deal with the role played by the nationalized banks in overall development of Indian economy and overall progress made by the India, making India today as the big economic power in world over. In this first video, I'll try to deal with the situation which was prevailing in India right from independence, that is 1947 to 1969. The situation which made the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi to nationalize 14 banks in one stroke on 19 July 1969. So in this video, 47 to 69, in second video, I will try to deal with 1970 to 1991. In 91, we all know LPG program was launched. Then in the third series, I will try to place before you the era of 1991 to 2005, and in the last video from 2005 till date. And I am also trying to push another video as to what are the likely disruptions which will take place in the banking scenario, in the finance scenario, coupled with technology, which will make the things either difficult or this disruption will be a game changer. As usual, coming to the explanation of all these things, I would like to make it clear that the intention of preparing this video is not to criticize anybody, not to criticize any policies, not to criticize any political party, or not to criticize any bank. However, before dealing the situation in this first video, we will have to keep in mind what the experts are saying as to the situation which may emerge as a post-COVID scenario. What experts are saying? They are privately saying that even before COVID, the Indian economy was struggling, there were problems, revenue problems were there, and masses were struggling, job loss were there, and so many steps were required to be taken by Indian government to stabilize the economy. Now, as the national and international experts are trying to explain the scenario of post-COVID, we may not be in a position to take all the points of what they say, but if we try to place very relevant and minimal points, then we will have to note that the experts are saying that the economic activity will deeply decline. They say world over, the decline would amount to $11 trillion, when in India we were talking about developing our economy to the extent of $5 trillion. They say there will be huge labor dislocation. Migrants will move here and there. At the same time, availability of jobs and availability of labor, a mismatch will create. Where there are jobs, there are no laborers. Where there are laborers, there are no jobs. That situation will come up. Poverty, inequality, painful job losses, no new opportunities, economic weaknesses will prevail. Women will be thrown out of the labor market. Gender distress will increase. Liquidity provisions which may be built up may fall short, and the jobs which are lost will never come back to the system. The another observation is that large-scale bankruptcy will take place, especially in the sector of SME and MSME. They say the rate of bankruptcy may triple from 4% at present to 12%, and that will also result into more job losses. As per one analysis, more than 1 billion students will lose their classes. More than 500 million people all over the world may be pushed to below poverty line yet again. Huge investment in healthcare will have to be done, and the issue will have to be addressed after pandemic. Deciding priorities of expenditure will be a great challenge to all the economies, including Indian economy. Maintaining financial stability will be a challenge. Gender inequality will create a social problem. Tax reliefs, interest reliefs, unemployment insurances, revenue losses, and premature withdrawal, likely scenario they are saying. The premature withdrawals of the funds will be very costly to any economy, including Indian economy. Digital transformation shall be the need of the hour, but as we all know, that will require huge funds. Maintaining stability will be a great challenge. DBT, Manarega, food grain distribution will be the main pillars as far as Indian economy is concerned. And mind well, remember, these are the minimal observations which have been explained by the experts, and who knows what is going to happen once the COVID is settled and the real picture will come out. After noting all these observations, even a layman will say that addressing such type of challenges post-COVID is not going to be a cup of tea of private banks whose branches are not spread all over India, whose constant focus has always been on profits and more profits, and many of them, many times, they are the reluctant followers of the government guidelines as far as the mass banking is concerned. It will be a huge task to be performed selflessly, and hence tinkering with the present structure of PSU banks will be a very adventurous step and very challenging step and very ambitious step, and 10 times the government will have to think about tinkering with the system of public sector banks which is prevailing in India. On the other hand, experts are saying that the package which has been given by Government of India of 20 lakh crores is not enough. As we all know, this package has been pushed through in totality through public sector undertakings, and we will have to salute the bank employees, those who are ensuring that the intentions of the government in pushing the package are coming true, and at the same time they are working hard, risking their life, coming to the banks day in and day out, and they are trying to ensure that the package declared by the government is proving to be successful for the overall growth of the economy and addressing the problems post-pandemic. Now, when the experts are saying that the package of 20 lakh crore is not going to be enough and more package will have to be pushed, a serious placement I would like to make here that in that case, again pushing that package through public sector bank would be most prudent step on the part of the government of India. Now, while dealing with the situation of 1947 to 69, I would like to place before all of you my observations that a similar or more serious condition was prevailing in India during the period of 1947 to 69, as I told you, which created a situation that Indira Gandhi was required to nationalize the banks. But the data which I am going to unfold in different videos in this series will surprise you, will make you happy, will make you astonished that how the nationalized banks have played their role fantastic way to see that India is becoming a great economic power. Now we'll start with 1947 and the year of the then Prime Minister Pandit Nehru. Interestingly enough, before that, we will have to know that the first bank in India was established in 1770, named Hindustan Bank, Bank of Hindustan, but it was liquidated in 1832. Next was General Bank of India. It was established in 1786, but it failed in 1791. The largest and oldest bank, which is still existing in the name of State Bank of India, was originated by the British Presidency under the title Bank of Calcutta in mid-June 1806. In 1809, it was renamed as Bank of Bengal, and two more banks were there, Bank of Bombay and Bank of Madras. And these three banks were amalgamated or merged in 1921 to form an Imperial Bank of India, which was subsequently nationalized in 1955, we all know. On the other hand, Reserve Bank of India was established in 1935 under the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. Now, the first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, his development model envisaged dominant role of the state as an all-pervasive entrepreneur and financer of private business as well as public sector business, an industrial policy resolution of 1948 proposed a mixed economy to be followed by India. In 1947, Industrial Dispute Act governing organized industrial labours was passed. In 1949, Reserve Bank of India, previously a shareholders' bank, was nationalised. In 1950, the Planning Commission, a central planning body, was set up. I am trying to tell you step by step what were the steps taken by. We all know the Constitution of India was adopted on 26 January 1950. Now in 1950, India set up the Planning Commission to oversee the entire range of planning, including resource allocation, implementation of appraisal of 5 years plan. The 5-year plans were centralized economic and social growth programs, but those were modeled on the style being followed in Russia, that is USSR. The 5-year plans of India resembled the central planning of Soviet Union, and as I told you, steel, mining, machine tools, water, telecommunication, insurance, electric plants, all other industries were slowly and effectively nationalized till mid-1950. In 1951, first 5-year plan was placed on the model called Harrod-Dommer model of economic growth, focusing on the primary sector, and it was presented. On the other hand, in 1951, the first IIT was set up in Kharagpur. In 1953, Air India was nationalized. The second 5-year plan, 1956 to 61, laid down the foundation of economic modernization of India to better serve India with a long-term perspective. The second 5-year plan and the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956 paved the way for development of public sector on huge scale and assess the license Raj naturally. The resolution set out as a national objective the establishment of a socialistic pattern of economy and society. In 1956, Industrial Policy Resolution was passed by the Parliament, making the beginning of license Raj, as I told you. In 1956, second 5-year plan based on Friedman Mahalanobis model focusing heavy industry was also presented. Meanwhile, the population had virtually doubled right from 1946, meaning the number of people requiring food will double in that socialistic area. The Imperial Bank was already nationalized in 1955 and it was named as State Bank of India, and 80% of the assets were pushed under the control of government. The insurance sector, on the other hand, was nationalized in 1956 and LIC was formed. Export Guarantee Corporation was founded on 30 July 1957. So before nationalization, so many steps were taken for the development of economy in India. In 1957, decimal system of coinage was introduced. In 1958, the great Dhirubhai Ambani incorporated the Reliance Commercial Corporation. In 1959, Rourkela plant was commissioned. In 1963, Bhakra Nangal project became operational. In those days, the then Prime Minister Shastri's focus on food security arose from the fact that since 1960, India was on the verge of mass famine. Food aid imports from the US were required to be made, which were required to compromise the Indian autonomy of international policy. At that time, the genesis, Mr. Swaminathan, along with his friends, came out with a new yield of variety of seeds of weeds, setting up what came to be known subsequently as Green Revolution. In 1965, as I told you, the Green Revolution was launched. Actually, the idea of nationalization of banks was being tossed in the then Congress Party of India since 1948 only. Now looking back to the situation, China War in 1962, death of Nehruji in 1964, Pakistan War in 1965, death of Shastriji in 1966, Lok Sabha elections in which Congress had problems in 1967 under the leadership of Mrs. Indira Gandhi are the important factors which resulted into the bank nationalization on 19 July. In 1965, on the other hand, daily TV programs began, and in 1967, first commercial was aired on this bharat. In 1968, the Foreign Investment Board, FIB as we call it, was established. Droughts, negative GDP growth, double-digit inflation, decline in forest reserve forced the government of India to devaluate rupee from 4.76 rupee a dollar to 7.50 a dollar, and it has got its great effects on Gulf also. There was no mass banking. Banks were run by private industrial groups and were not ready to lend to small man in those days. In 1966, the Indian rupee, as I told you, was evaluated, and PL 480, the famous program, Public Law 480 Food Grain Program, was a part of aid to India through a consortium of World Bank. Agricultural credit continued to be only at 2% right from 1951 to 1969, and the industrial credit, on the other hand, went up to 64% from 34% in 1951. And if we take overall industry plus commerce together, the percentage went up to 1984 of the total credit during the period of 1951 to 1969. Though private banks were expanding their branches, it was all in the urban and metropolitan areas, and no private bank was ready to open their branches in rural areas, which blocked the credit to rural poor. They were not being offered credit. Only 13% of the bank branches were in rural area. Many directors of the private sector banks were also directors in different industrial houses, giving a scope for conflict of interest. RBI governors that time were opposed to nationalization of banks, while some of them were open for social controls. The then Deputy Prime Minister Morarji Desai, they tried a midway in 1968, and he came out with the social controls and the National Credit Council. The nationalization legislation, you will be surprised, was drafted within 24 hours by the experts like I.G. Patel, L.K. Zha, the then Governor, Finance Minister R.K. Seshadri. I.G. Patel ultimately convinced Mrs. Indira Gandhi to nationalize only big banks in India and leave aside foreign banks from nationalization. D.K. Ghosh, P.N. Haksar, a.k.a. Bakshi, worked round the clock on the night of 18 July to prepare the legislation with all others. We would like to analyze the situation. What was the prevailing situation? Why 19 July? The parliament was to begin on 21st July 1969. The term of V.V. Giri, the then acting president, who was acting after the death of Zakir Hussain, was to end on 20th July. That's why, before that, 19 July was the only available day to take the signature of Mr. V.V. Giri on proposed ordinance. The criteria of nationalization banks was upgraded from initial idea of 42 crores to 50 crores to leave Andhra Bank out of the gamut of nationalization, and also ANZ Greenlist Bank, a foreign bank, was left outside. The Banking Companies Act 1969 was laid down. The ordinance of nationalizing the banks, which was issued on 19 July 1969, was converted into an act by the action of Parliament on 14 February 1970. However, the moment the ordinance was issued, it was challenged by one Mr. Rustum Kavaji Kapoor in Supreme Court. The judgment of Supreme Court came on 10 February 1970. 10 against 1, the Supreme Court decided and gave a judgment that the action of nationalization of banks is invalid, and at the same time, naturally, the Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Undertaking Act of 1969 is also invalid. Now, this decision of Supreme Court created a necessity for pushing one more constitutional amendment named as 25th Amendment to the Constitution of India, in which the article number 31 was amended by inserting few more clauses, and this amendment was passed by the Parliament on 1st December 1971. This move of Indira Gandhi to nationalize the 14 banks which were privately operating, it was aimed to align public sector with the goals of socialism, and that decision of her made her darling of the masses. Bank nationalization helped to boost farm credit and dealing to other priority sectors. Financial savings jumped as banks were made to open branches in rural areas. Without competition, however, the lenders became little complacent, and with political intervention, crony capitalism took its first beginning immediately after the nationalization of the bank. Now, looking to this little statistics, at the time of nationalization of banks, the offices and the branches were 8,262, and at that time, a branch was serving 64,000 population. In other way, behind every 64,000 population, there was only one branch. The priority sector advances were only 14%. The scheduled commercial bank's small loans below 10,000 were only to the extent of 501 crores, when the total loans of the scheduled commercial banks were more than 3,600 crores. What they lent to priority was hardly 501 crores. The huge investment for industrialization which was made in first and second year 5-year plan was further boosted up with the support of nationalized banks. Supported by the nationalized banks, Green Revolution, which was initiated in 1960, took further initiative took further momentum, and today we are not only self-sufficient in food grain production, but today we are on the top of the world as far as the production of food grain is concerned. A huge credit support, huge credit flow by nationalized banks from rural to metropolitan created a white revolution which was initiated in 1960 and 70, and today they say India is the largest milk producer all over the world. How the nationalization of banks changed the economic scene of India and put the economy in total expansion and elevation of poverty shall be explained with enough statistics in my next video. So to summarize, we can say that the situation prevailing on the economic and political front was very challenging. Credit was not being passed to rural poor. Agricultural credit was stuck to only 2% for more than 20 years. On the other hand, industrial and commercial credit grew to the extent of 84%. Rupee was required to be devaluated. Wars with China and Pakistan created many problems. Continuous droughts were having the sufferings of the Indian population. There was shortage of food grains, and rupee was required to be devaluated. Branch expansion was not taking place in the rural area, and as a result of that, overall economy was not developing, and the entire economy was within the limited hands, and the ownership of the assets was with the private and not with the public. So resource generation was difficult, and the resources which were generated were not used for the expansion of the economy and development of the economy and remove the poverty. In such a situation, fund shortage for infrastructure was felt, food grains were required to be imported. This made nationalization of the banks an obvious choice of Ms. Indira Gandhi. Socialists and bank unions were demanding for bank nationalization for long. Indira Gandhi had also to reposition her image as a socially progressive leader, and that is why she also pushed the nationalization of the bank. With this background, banks were nationalized to develop Indian economy from all angles and in all the areas under the supervision of Government of India. In the next part of this series, we will have a deep look on overall progress which took place due to bank nationalization between 1970 to 1991. With this, I am coming to the end of this first video of this series, Bank Nationalization to Bank Privatization. I shall be coming shortly with my second video, in which I shall be covering the fantastic performance done by nationalized banks during the period 1970 to 1990. I am sure you will like that video, because in that video I shall be explaining how fantastically the different initiatives were taken by the nationalized banks under the supervision of the government and Reserve Bank of India, and that helped to grow Indian economy like never before. So I wait for my next video. Till then, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Thank you, thank you, thank you.